Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian. I am here today at the Rock Island Auction House. I'm taking a look at some of the guns that they're going to be selling in their upcoming June of 2016 regional auction. And one that they have is this very nice looking Pond revolver. Now the Pond is one of the guns that was involved in this deep and interesting story of Rollin White's patent. So just the quick details on the background of this. Rollin White was a gun designer who invented kind of a pretty mediocre, lousy revolver, but in the process he managed to get a patent on the drilled through cylinder, the idea that you'd have a hole going all the way through the cylinder from front to back. Now when he patented this, the common guns at the time were muzzle loaders, and a drilled through cylinder was not something anyone would actually want. However, he ended up having that patent during the dawn of cartridge revolvers. He sold a license to it uniquely to Smith & Wesson. Now Smith & Wesson used this to great effect. They basically monopolized the cartridge revolver market for the first number of years of its life. Well, just because Smith & Wesson had this licensed patent doesn't mean that everybody else was just going to give up. There were a wide number of basically just patent infringement cases. People who thought that this patent was ludicrous, that there's no way someone could patent a feature like that, or people that noted that this had already been patented a long time ago in Europe and was now expired, and a lot of people didn't like this idea. So some of them just went ahead and made their own revolvers. Now, Smith & Wesson's agreement with Rollin White required that he follow up and file lawsuits against anybody who infringed on the patent, and he did that. Ultimately, by the way, he spent most of the royalty money he got having to defend patent infringement suits or file patent infringement suits, and ended up not particularly well off for this whole debacle. Anyway, Lucius W. Pond was one of these designers who infringed on Rollin White's patent. He designed this 6-shot tip-up 32 caliber rimfire revolver, started making them in 1861, was promptly sued by Rollin White and Smith & Wesson in 1862, and lost the case. On the merits of the case, it's pretty much an open and shut deal. As a result, Pond had to turn over his production of guns to Smith & Wesson. So Pond didn't have to just give his guns to Smith & Wesson. He was able to actually sell them to Smith & Wesson, but at a reduced price. Smith & Wesson bought just under 4,500 of these guns for about $7.80 a piece. Smith & Wesson then resold them themselves. They were remarked as being manufactured for Smith & Wesson, and they were sold for $12 to $13 depending on barrel length. So ultimately, things could have been worse for Pond. He presumably at least was able to make back the money that he had spent manufacturing these guns, if not able to make any profit on them. Now it's interesting, there are a couple other guns that Pond started making. Just before the patent infringement suit, he actually developed a version of this gun in the 44 Henry rimfire cartridge, which would have been a really interesting gun. Could have had some significant market repercussions. That would have been one of the most powerful rimfire revolvers on the market at the time, and it would have been very interesting to have a revolver chambered for the same ammunition that was able to be used in this new and very cutting-edge Henry rifle. He was able to reinforce his latch mechanism such that apparently his 44 caliber rimfires were durable enough for sustained use. However, only a handful of them were manufactured before this patent infringement suit, and because they worked the same way as this 32, that was cut off. So instead, in 1863, Pond put together one of the less successful workaround type designs. He developed a 32 caliber pistol that used removable chamber sleeves, and you'd pull the sleeve out and you'd put a cartridge in that, and then you'd put that back in the chamber. It was really a pretty jerry-rigged sort of system, and it didn't do all that well, although it was manufactured until 1870. So why don't we take a closer look at this guy, because for all of the interest of the other versions, the subject of this video is in fact the original 32 Pond. So the Pond 32 is a tip-up design. Now you may be thinking to yourself, didn't Smith & Wesson do tip-up revolvers at first? Yes, they did. However, the Smith & Wesson tip-up guns had a hinge up here, where Pond put the hinge back here. And Pond's version actually worked a lot better. The Smiths, this was one of the reasons that the Smith & Wesson revolvers were restricted to fairly small cartridges, was because this wasn't a very strong hinge. Pond did it better, worked great in the 32, and reportedly even worked in the 44 Rimfire. Now to open the gun, we have a spring-loaded button here, which pushes out this catch. Push that, and then the barrel assembly tips up. That allows you to take your cartridge, your empty cases out, reload it, clean the gun, whatever you need to do. If you need to completely disassemble the two, you pull this screw out, and that separates the two halves completely. Now, if we look at the mechanical functioning, first off, it's interesting to note that we have this recessed shield that the cylinder sits in. This is going to help protect the shooter in case you have a ruptured cartridge. This prevents the gas from coming back. It acts as a shield for the hand. That's a nice safety feature. You'll see coming up, there aren't a whole lot of other safety features on this gun, which is something that Pond probably could have done better. At any rate, inside here we have our firing pin. These are rimfire pistols, so you've got a big blade style firing pin there. We have a cylinder lock down here and a hand that comes out of that little slot when you work the hammer. So when I cock the hammer, you can see the hand comes out here. That's going to grab on the ratchets of the cylinder to rotate it one position. And then we also have down here a cylinder locking catch right there. That is going to lock into these notches. That prevents the cylinder from rotating out of position. And then when you pull the trigger, the firing pin drops like that. Upon cocking it, you can see that the cylinder lock goes down, so that allows the cylinder to move while the hand is pushing on it. Just for convenience sake, the Pond actually came with its own disassembly screwdriver threaded into the base of the grip. You got that there. Nice little handy thing. This would also work as an ejector rod. If you had a sticky cartridge case that you had to push out of the cylinder, you could do it with that, though you'd have to remove the cylinder first. Now, I mentioned a lack of safeties. The main one is that there's no half-cock notch on this hammer. It's either down or it's all the way back and ready to fire. And when it's ready to fire, it has this sheath-type trigger without a trigger guard. The second safety issue is that when this hammer is down, it's resting directly on a cartridge. So that is full forward travel. It doesn't have any sort of rebounding mechanism. This is definitely a gun that if you were going to carry it, you would want to carry it on an empty chamber. If you actually carried this with the hammer down on a live cartridge, the hammer would stick up slightly because it'd be sitting on the rim, and a good blow to the back of the hammer would fire it. So not a good thing. That's something that's utterly unacceptable today in gun design, and Pond wasn't ahead of his time on this. That's something that could have been improved. You'll notice this does have a brass frame. The Pond revolvers were made with both brass and steel frames. Now lastly, we can take a look at the markings here. On the top of the barrel we have L.W. Pond, Worcester, Massachusetts, and his 1860 patent for the basic design of the gun. And on the side here we have the marking that was added after the lawsuit, manufactured for Smith & Wesson, patent April 3rd, 1855. Our serial number here is on the base of the grip. This is number 4456. There were a substantial number of these guns made, more than 5,000 of them. You do have numbers on several of the other parts as well. The cylinder axis and the barrel both have matching numbers there. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. I really like taking a look at all of these guns that were wrapped up in this Rollin White patent debacle, because there was a ton of creativity that came out of that artificial restriction on people's ability to design guns. So if you'd like to add this one to your own collection, take a look at the description text below. You'll find a link there to Rock Island's catalog page. On it, you can take a look at their pictures, and if you'd like to place a bid on it, you can do so right through their website. Thanks for watching.